Hi Bob, do you believe in God?
Hi Lindsay. Actually no. I am an atheist. I don't think there is any evidence for God.
Bob, I would like to talk to you about God. I think there is lots of evidence all around us.
Please? I'm not really interested in talking at all. I have spent time listening to such arguments. But I've made up my mind and there is no point in talking about it.
Wow. I think it's really disappointing that you won't even hear me out. I'm kind of hurt because I feel you don't value my opinion at all. Do you really think you know everything? I don't think so.
You see, you were taking it personally. This just shows what I have suspected all along. God is all in your mind. In fact, God is just a projection of yourself. You feel rejected because your God is actually some kind of involuntary manifestation of your own ego. To me, it's just more evidence that God is a nonsensical figment of your own imagination.
Sounds like you have a rather developed theory there about me. But I don't buy your story. Would you like to discuss that?
Sure. Imagine you try to set me up with a blind date. But your description makes me skeptical. It's too good to be true. Either you were exaggerating, or maybe she doesn't even exist. In fact, you admit she's a lot like what you want to be. I'm suspicious, and decline the offer. Now you get emotional, you overreact like I'm rejecting you. This is what's happening now, only instead of a blind date, it's God.
Wow, harsh. Let me start with this. You analyze me, and suggest a delusion or psychosis. But on the face of it, it's just an ordinary exchange. And you skip yourself. But sure, let's go with it. Sounds like you scooped your idea from Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. In any case, your argument is just a piece of pop psychology, an attempt to explain belief in God using psychoanalysis. But Dawkins himself knew this approach was inadequate to deal with the question of God's existence. That is why he spends far more effort discussing biology, evolution, chemistry and physics, real hard sciences.
It may not be an argument against God's existence, but it could still explain the behavior of believers. They could be deluded and unable to detach themselves sufficiently for real scientific investigation.
My first problem with your analysis is this. You base your theory on old ideas like the ego and id, from Carl Jung. But he was no atheist, but some kind of pantheist, who believed in supernatural spiritual connections. A collective unconscious. In short, he was a flake, and scientific progress can't be built on his subjective notions.
How then do you explain your emotional reaction to my skepticism? Often believers say something like, "You are rejecting God," when I haven't even got to the question, does God exist? You equate skepticism with rejection, and take it personally.
Let's stick to mainstream psychiatry. In accepted theory, it's people who have difficulty connecting to others, who are incapable of empathy, who are considered mentally ill or psychotic. A sociopath is someone who can't sympathize, empathize, or show compassion for others. Even a little overreaction is better than none. It's quite natural for a person to feel hurt when a friend or respected persona is rejected or doubted. Yet in your approach, it's the person who shows healthy empathy and concern who is flawed. This is another glaring error in your theory. You have reversed the norm, preferring sociopathic behavior like carelessness and emotional isolation.
Too much emotion is still an imbalance. It's inappropriate for you to show such empathy and self-identification to a possibly non-existent entity.
Actually, it's quite normal for people to empathize with people they haven't personally met. We admire public figures, heroes, even the deceased. This respect and awe is considered quite appropriate. If you attacked Martin Luther King, people would naturally get involved and defend his reputation. Have you personally known Richard Dawkins? Can you prove Christopher Hitchens existed? Yet you yourself have empathy for them and might also get emotionally excited defending their views.
Yes, but these people are accepted to have existed, and there is enough evidence to convince most skeptics.
Well, many might reasonably challenge the existence of famous people even with such evidence, or at least doubt their existence as portrayed. And others might reasonably believe in characters with much less historical evidence, for instance Robin Hood or King Arthur. The real issue is that God is a unique case. Put yourself in the position of an agnostic. He is confronted by people who say there is a God, and also by atheists, and both claim to have evidence. Why should he believe one over the other without thorough personal investigation?
He should investigate, and when he does, he will become an atheist.
Oh please. Even you know this is nonsense. There are plenty of intelligent people who believe in God. In fact, the majority of people believe in God. Investigating the existence of God simply doesn't always result in atheism. You're selling a myth.
Well, if people can come to either conclusion, then your position is no better. Obviously, evidence for God must be inconclusive.
In that case, why aren't you an agnostic? That is both the best philosophical option and the most scientific approach. But let's go back to your theory. Here's my third beef. You think you account for emotional involvement of a believer, but you don't even bother to consult me or ask me what I am feeling or why. Imagine a courtroom where hearsay evidence from outsiders was valued more highly than that of eyewitnesses. In fact, your approach is even worse. You would disregard the testimony of the eyewitnesses entirely, and only accept your own opinion. Obviously, courts don't operate that way. But if you had asked, I would have told you that I'm certainly not feeling rejected because God was actually a projection of myself in my mind. I find your idea ridiculous.
Then why are you emotionally reacting?
Glad you asked. In the first place, you should recognize that emotions come from sensory input and assessment by the mind. I might see a child in danger and react with fear. That response would be authentic, even if I was mistaken about the danger. No one would describe that as psychosis or self-deception. Similarly, my belief system makes me view you as in danger. As a fellow human being, I have empathy and compassion, and want to help you. I may be mistaken in my worldview, but I'm not projecting my ego upon you. I'm not feeling rejected because of projections of God upon myself. I'm simply showing compassion upon a fellow human.
But I think you don't really care about me at all. You don't even know me. It's just a defense mechanism. You're reacting to a perceived injury.
The problem is, you can't distinguish between cases. I'd have the same compassion and concern if a stranger were injured in a car accident and needed first aid. If they refused life-saving medical treatment, I'd feel great concern and perhaps great emotion, even though they were a stranger. You would not dare claim that the majority of acts of compassion were mere defense mechanisms triggered by perceived self-injury. You'd take them at face value. If I were a paramedic or a nurse, and you were rescued, you'd hardly accuse me of self-delusions for saving your life. But you are in the same boat as the old man who stubbornly won't go to the hospital. Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but his relatives aren't deluded sociopaths for trying to help him as best they know how.
Okay, suppose I acknowledge that your arguments make me look stupid. This won't help you, because I'm also a homosexual deviant.